Untamable dragon was about to be sacrificed until an orphan human boy did something incredible. Before we dive into this story, drop a quick hi in the comments and tell me where you're watching from. It really helps support the channel. The ancient stone temple glowed with an eerie blue light, illuminating the massive creature chained to the ceremonial altar. The dragon's scales reflected the light like thousands of obsidian mirrors. Its breathing labored as the magical restraints tightened with each passing moment. On the distant planet of Celerin, the indigenous Traceari species had built their entire civilization around dragon worship. These magnificent beasts had once soared freely through the purple skies, blessing the land with their magic. But that was before the great corruption began spreading across the dragons, turning their benevolent nature into uncontrollable rage. The once sacred bond between Traceari and dragons had fractured, and now only one solution remained: sacrifice the corrupted to appease the gods and save the remaining pure dragons. The ritual must proceed, announced High Priest Valen, his elongated features severe in the dim light. His six-fingered hands clutched a ceremonial dagger made from the tooth of the first dragon to ever bond with the Traceari. This beast has attacked 3 villages and killed 17 of our people. Its corruption has progressed too far. The gathered crowd of Traceari, tall, willowy beings with iridescent skin, murmured in agreement. Their species had evolved alongside dragons for millennia, developing natural telepathic abilities to communicate with the creatures. But this particular dragon, a female they called Morvith, had become completely untamable, her mind a storm of chaos that rejected all attempts at connection. Hidden in the shadows of a crumbling column, 12-year-old Ethan Cole watched with wide eyes. Unlike the elegant Traceari around him, Ethan was short, stocky, and undeniably human. A refugee orphan whose parents had died when their research vessel crashed on Celerin 4 years ago. The Traceari had taken him in out of curiosity and pity, making him work as a temple servant while they studied this strange alien child who lacked their telepathic abilities. "The dragon isn't evil," Ethan whispered to himself, gripping the rough stone column. "She's in pain." Ethan had been watching Morvith for weeks, sneaking into the holding chambers where they kept her before the sacrifice. While the Traceari could only sense chaotic rage when trying to connect with her mind, Ethan noticed something different. The dragon would calm slightly whenever he brought her food, her massive eyes following him with what seemed like curiosity rather than fury. The high priest raised the ceremonial dagger above his head. "With this sacred blade, we release this corrupted spirit and purify our land." Ethan's heart pounded in his chest. Without thinking, he burst from his hiding place and sprinted across the temple floor. "Wait! Please wait!" A collective gasp rose from the Traceari as the small human child inserted himself between the massive dragon and the high priest. The dragon's eyes snapped open, black pupils dilating as they fixed on Ethan. "Step away, human child," High Priest Valen commanded, his voice resonating with authority. "This is not your concern. Your kind does not understand our ways or our bond with the dragons." "But I do understand," Ethan said, his voice cracking with emotion. "You're wrong about Morvith. She's not corrupted, she's infected. Look at the pattern of discoloration on her scales. It's not spreading from her heart outward like corruption. It's spreading from this wound on her shoulder." The high priest paused, lowering the dagger slightly. "Explain yourself, child." Ethan swallowed hard. "Remember the meteor shower last season? I think she was hit by something from space. The patterns look like the bacterial infections my parents studied. They were xenobiologists," he added, a hint of pride in his voice. "They taught me to recognize infection patterns. This isn't spiritual corruption, it's physical illness." "Absurd," hissed one of the elder Traceari. "The human makes up stories to delay the inevitable. Dragons cannot be affected by mere physical ailments." "Then let me prove it," Ethan challenged, his small hands balling into fists at his sides. "Let me try to help her. If I'm wrong, you can proceed with your sacrifice." High Priest Valen studied the boy carefully. In the 4 years since the strange human child had come to live among them, He had proven unusually resilient and remarkably observant. Unlike the Traceari children who relied heavily on their telepathic abilities, Ethan had developed keen physical senses to compensate for his lack of mental powers. And how would you propose to help this untamable beast when our strongest mind healers have failed? Valen asked, genuine curiosity in his tone. Ethan took a deep breath. I need access to my parents' research equipment from our ship, and I need 3 days. A murmur of protest rose from the gathered Traceari, but High Priest Valen raised a 6-fingered hand for silence. He stepped closer to the dragon and examined the discolored scales around the wound Ethan had pointed out. For the first time, he noticed that the pattern did indeed differ from the traditional corruption markings they had seen before. 3 days, Valen finally pronounced. You have 3 days, human child. If you fail, the sacrifice will proceed as planned. Relief flooded through Ethan. Thank you, High Priest. As the ceremonial gathering dispersed, Ethan approached the chained dragon cautiously. Morvatha's enormous eyes tracked his movement, a low rumble emanating from her chest. It's okay, Ethan whispered. I'm going to help you. The dragon made no response, but Ethan thought he detected a slight relaxation in her posture. He reached out slowly and placed his hand on her scales, feeling the unnatural heat radiating from them. I'll be back soon, he promised. The crashed research vessel had remained largely untouched since the accident that claimed his parents' lives. The Traceari, with their limited interest in physical technology, had salvaged only what they recognized as valuable, mostly precious metals and power sources. The scientific equipment had been left to gather dust. Ethan climbed through the twisted metal of the ship's hull, memories of his parents flooding back as he navigated the familiar corridors. Dr. Lauren Bennett and Dr. Ryan Mitchell had been brilliant xenobiologists, traveling the galaxy to study alien life forms. They would have been fascinated by the dragons of Celerin if they had lived long enough to study them properly. In the main laboratory, Ethan found his mother's portable medical scanner mostly intact. The power cell was depleted, but he knew the Traceari had technology that could recharge it. Next, he located his father's field kit, containing various medicines and tools for treating alien infections. Mom, Dad, he whispered to the empty ship, I hope you're watching. I'm going to use everything you taught me. By the time Ethan returned to the temple, night had fallen. The dragon was alone, guarded by a single Traceari priest who eyed the human boy suspiciously as he approached with his arms full of equipment. The high priest authorized my presence, Ethan said confidently, setting down the medical scanner and field kit. The guard nodded reluctantly and stepped back, maintaining a wary distance from both the dragon and the human. Ethan powered up the scanner, relief washing over him when the ancient device hummed to life. He approached Morvath cautiously, holding the scanner in front of him. This won't hurt, he promised, though he wasn't sure if the dragon could understand him. I just need to check what's making you sick. The dragon's eyes narrowed, but she remained still as Ethan ran the scanner over her wounded shoulder. The device beeped and displayed a complex analysis on its small screen. Ethan frowned as he read the results. Extraterrestrial bacteria, he muttered. Just like I thought. The meteor must have been carrying it. He worked through the night, taking samples and running tests on his father's portable analyzer. By dawn, Ethan had identified the specific strain of bacteria and was synthesizing an antibiotic compound from the materials in the field kit. High Priest Valen arrived as the sun rose, his expression serious as he observed the human boy working with unfamiliar devices around the sacred dragon. What have you discovered, Ethan Cole? He asked, using the human's full name formally. Ethan looked up, dark circles under his eyes. It's definitely an infection. The bacteria is attacking her nervous system, causing pain that registers as rage in her telepathic projections. That's why your people can't connect with her. She's broadcasting pain, not corruption. Valen's elongated features remained impassive. And can you heal this infection? I think so, Ethan said, holding up a vial of blue liquid. This should kill the bacteria, but I'll need to inject it directly into the wound, and then apply these antibiotic patches to her scales. The treatment will take all 3 days to complete. Proceed, Valen said after a moment's consideration. But be warned, if the dragon attacks you, we will not intervene. Your fate will be your own responsibility. Ethan nodded solemnly. As the high priest departed, he turned back to Morvith, whose massive head was now raised, watching him intently. This might sting a little, Ethan told her, filling a large syringe with the blue antibiotic. But it will make you feel better soon. He approached the wound slowly, syringe ready. The dragon's muscles tensed, and a warning growl rumbled in her chest. I know you're scared, Ethan said softly. I was scared too, when I first came here. Everything was strange and different, and I couldn't understand anyone because I don't have telepathy like the Traceari. But you and I are kind of alike, you know? Both of us are alone in our own way. As he spoke, Ethan continued to move closer until he stood directly beside the infected wound. The discolored scales were hot to the touch, and beneath them, he could see the flesh pulsing unnaturally. My parents would have loved to meet you, he continued, his voice steady despite his racing heart. They always said that understanding comes before healing. I think I understand you, Morvith. You're not untamable. You're just in pain and scared. Anyone would be. The dragon's growl subsided slightly, her massive eyes swiveling to watch him more closely. Here we go, Ethan said, and plunged the syringe into the wound. Morvith roared, her entire body tensing against the restraints. The temple shook with the force of her reaction, and several Traceari guards rushed in, weapons ready. But Ethan stood his ground, emptying the syringe completely before stepping back. It's okay, he called to the guards. She was just surprised. She's not attacking. Indeed, the dragon had already settled, though her breathing remained labored. Ethan could see the antibiotics beginning to work, the unnatural pulsing beneath her scales slowing. Good girl, he whispered, reaching out to stroke her scales gently. The worst part is over. Over the next 2 days, Ethan barely left the dragon's side. He applied antibiotic patches to the infected scales, constantly monitored her vitals with his mother's scanner, and spoke to her continuously in a soft, reassuring voice. He told her about Earth, about his parents, about the stars they had visited together before coming to Celerin. He wasn't sure if she understood his words, but the sound of his voice seemed to soothe her. By the dawn of the 3rd day, the change in Morvith was remarkable. The discoloration had receded significantly, and her breathing was strong and even. Most noticeably, her eyes had changed. The frenzied, pained look had been replaced by a clear, intelligent gaze that followed Ethan's every movement. High Priest Valen and a delegation of Elder Traceari arrived to witness the final assessment. The temple was packed with curious onlookers, all eager to see if the human child had indeed accomplished the impossible. The 3 days are complete, Valen announced formally. What is your conclusion, Ethan Cole? Ethan stood proudly beside Morvith. The infection has been neutralized. Her vitals are strong, and the wound is healing cleanly. But the real test will be telepathic connection. I believe she's ready to communicate again. Valen nodded and stepped forward, placing his 6-fingered hand on the dragon's head. He closed his eyes, his face a mask of concentration as he attempted to establish the telepathic bond that had been impossible just days before. The temple fell silent, every Traceari holding their breath. Then, slowly, a look of astonishment spread across the high priest's features. Remarkable, he whispered, opening his eyes. Her mind is clear. The chaos has subsided. I can sense gratitude. He looked at Ethan with newfound respect. She is grateful to you, human child. She understands what you have done for her. A murmur of amazement rippled through the gathered crowd. Ethan felt a surge of pride and relief wash over him. Can you release her restraints now? He asked. She needs to move to complete her healing. Valen hesitated only briefly before nodding to the guards. One by one, the magical chains binding Morvith were deactivated and removed. The dragon remained still as the last restraint fell away. Then slowly, carefully, she rose to her full height. Ethan's breath caught in his throat. Free from her chains, Morvith was truly magnificent. easily the size of 3 transport ships, with wings that spanned the width of the entire temple when partially extended. Her obsidian scales shimmered in the temple lights, and her eyes, intelligent and aware, fixed on Ethan. The Traysari backed away nervously, but Ethan stood his ground. Morvith lowered her massive head until it was level with the small human boy. Then, to everyone's shock, she gently pressed her snout against Ethan's chest in what could only be described as a gesture of affection. "You're welcome," Ethan whispered, placing his hands on either side of her face. What happened next astonished even the most experienced dragon handlers among the Traysari. Morvith extended a telepathic connection, not to any of the Traysari, but to Ethan himself. A flood of images and emotions washed over him: gratitude, relief, and something more, an offer. Ethan gasped as he understood what she was proposing. She wants to bond with me," he stammered, looking at High Priest Valen with wide eyes. "Is that possible? I don't have telepathic abilities like the Traysari." Valen approached cautiously, his expression a mixture of disbelief and wonder. "It should not be possible. No non-Traysari has ever bonded with a dragon in our entire history. Our telepathic evolution occurred specifically to facilitate this connection." Yet the evidence was undeniable. Morvith maintained the connection with Ethan, her massive head still pressed gently against him, a soft rumble of contentment emanating from her chest. "Perhaps," Valen said thoughtfully, "there are different kinds of connections than those we have known. Your human empathy, your ability to understand her pain without telepathy, may have forged a bond of a different nature." Ethan felt tears welling in his eyes. Since losing his parents, he had felt adrift, a stranger in an alien world. But now, in this most unexpected way, he had found a new kind of family. "What happens now?" he asked, his hand still resting on Morvith's scales. High Priest Valen looked from the human boy to the dragon and back again, a slow smile spreading across his usually solemn features. "Now, Ethan Cole, you must learn to fly." The next morning found Ethan standing nervously at the edge of the great launching platform atop the temple. Morvith waited beside him, fully healed and eager to take to the skies after her long confinement. A crowd of Traysari had gathered to witness what many were already calling a miracle, the first human-dragon bond in the history of Celerin. "I've never flown before," Ethan admitted, eyeing the makeshift saddle the temple craftspeople had fashioned for him overnight. "What if I fall off?" "She will not let you fall," Valen assured him, helping the boy climb onto Morvith's back. The bond between rider and dragon transcends physical constraints. Trust in it, as she trusts in you. Ethan settled into the saddle, gripping the handles tightly. Morvith turned her head to look at him, and he felt a wave of reassurance through their newfound connection. "Okay," he said, taking a deep breath. "I'm ready." Morvith unfurled her massive wings and launched herself from the platform. Ethan's stomach lurched as they plummeted momentarily before the wings caught the air, sending them soaring upward into the purple skies of Celerin. "Whoa!" Ethan cried, a mix of terror and exhilaration flooding through him as the ground fell away below. The wind rushed past his face, and the temple shrank to the size of a toy as they climbed higher. Through their bond, Ethan could sense Morvith's joy at being free again, her pleasure in sharing this flight with him. Her happiness was infectious, and soon Ethan found himself laughing out loud as they banked and swooped through the clouds. "This is amazing," he shouted, knowing she could feel his excitement even if she couldn't understand his words. They flew for hours, Morvith showing Ethan the world from above, the vast forests beyond the temple, the glittering lakes, and the distant mountains where other dragons made their homes. By the time they returned to the temple, Ethan felt as though he had discovered an entirely new planet. So different was Celerin when seen from the back of a dragon. As they landed on the platform, High Priest Valen approached with a formal delegation of elders. Ethan slid from Morvith's back, his legs wobbling slightly after the long flight. "The Council of Elders has made a decision," Valen announced. "In light of these unprecedented events, we wish to offer you, Ethan Cole, full citizenship among the Traceari people. Furthermore, we request that you share your knowledge of these infections so that we might better protect our dragons in the future. Ethan blinked in surprise. Full citizenship was something he had never expected. It meant he would be treated as an equal, not just a curiosity or a servant. I would be honored, he said, bowing as he had seen the Traceari do. And I'll teach you everything my parents taught me about treating infections. There is more, Valen continued. The bond you share with Morvith qualifies you for training as a dragon healer, a position of great respect among our people. Would you accept this role? Ethan felt a lump form in his throat. A dragon healer, someone who helped these magnificent creatures when they were in pain. It was exactly what his parents would have wanted for him. Yes, he said firmly. I accept. That night, as Ethan sat beside Morvith in the new quarters they had been given, a spacious chamber opened to the sky so the dragon could come and go freely. He reflected on how quickly his life had changed. Just 4 days ago, he had been a servant boy, an orphan tolerated but never truly accepted. Now he was a dragon rider, a citizen, a healer in training. We saved each other, didn't we? He whispered to Morvith, who rumbled contentedly in response. Through their bond, he felt her agreement. She had been days away from death, considered untamable and corrupted beyond redemption. He had been alone, a human child on an alien world. Together, they had found a new path forward. As Ethan drifted off to sleep against Morvith's warm scales, he knew that somewhere, his parents were watching and smiling. He had used their knowledge to save a life, and, in doing so, had found his place in the universe. And somewhere in the vastness of space, a meteor shower was beginning, perhaps carrying with it new challenges, new dangers, and new opportunities for an orphan boy and his dragon to prove what they could accomplish together. 6 months passed, and Ethan's life transformed completely. Under the guidance of Master Healer Nora Briggs, an elder Traceari with silver blue skin, he studied both dragon physiology and the traditional healing practices of Celerin. Each morning began with meditation in the temple gardens, followed by lessons in identifying various dragon ailments. Afternoons were spent in what remained of his parents' laboratory, where he taught the Traceari healers about microbiology and infection control. Your understanding of the physical world complements our telepathic insights, Nora told him one day as they treated a young dragon with a minor wing injury. Together, we create a more complete healing approach. Ethan nodded, carefully applying a healing salve to the dragon's membrane. My mom used to say that the best scientific discoveries happen at the intersection of different disciplines. His bond with Morvith deepened daily. Though he lacked the natural telepathic abilities of the Traceari, their connection had evolved into something unique, less direct than telepathy, but somehow more intuitive. He could sense her emotions, her physical state, and even glimpses of what she was seeing when they were apart. In return, she seemed to understand his thoughts without words, responding to his intentions almost before he was conscious of them himself. They flew together every evening, exploring farther across the landscapes of Celerin. Morvith had grown stronger since her healing, her obsidian scales now gleaming with health, her flight more powerful than ever. The other dragons, initially wary of a human rider, had gradually accepted Ethan's presence in their skies. One evening, as they soared above the eastern forests, Ethan noticed something unusual, a column of smoke rising from beyond the mountains, in a region the Traceari rarely visited. "What do you think that is?" he asked Morvith, leaning forward in his saddle. Through their bond, he sensed her curiosity and concern. The smoke didn't look natural. "Let's check it out," he decided, patting her neck. Morvith banked sharply, changing course toward the distant smoke. As they approached the mountains, Ethan felt a growing sense of unease. This remote area was known as the Forbidden Reach, a place the Traceari avoided due to ancient taboos. According to legend, it was where the first corrupted dragon had appeared centuries ago, beginning the cycle of sacrifice that Ethan had disrupted. They crested the mountain ridge, and Ethan gasped at what lay before them. In a valley below, A massive structure of gleaming metal rose from the forest floor, clearly not of Tracery design. Ships of various sizes surrounded it, and figures moved between them with purpose. Humans, Ethan whispered, recognizing the silhouettes even from this distance. Those are human ships. His heart raced with conflicting emotions. He hadn't seen another human being since his parents died 4 years ago. Part of him wanted to rush down immediately, to hear human voices and see human faces again. But another part felt caution. Why were humans here, in this remote part of Celerin, without making contact with the Tracery? Let's get closer, but carefully, he told Morvith. The dragon rumbled in agreement, descending toward the edge of the forest where they could observe without being seen. They landed silently among the trees, and Ethan slid from Morvith's back. Stay hidden, he whispered, patting her flank. I'll try to get a better look. Moving stealthily through the underbrush as the Tracery hunters had taught him, Ethan approached the clearing where the human facility stood. As he drew closer, he could make out more details, and what he saw chilled him to the bone. In a large pen adjacent to the main structure, 5 dragons were imprisoned behind energy barriers. Unlike the healthy dragons of the temple, these creatures looked ill, their scales dull and discolored, their movements sluggish. Men and women in laboratory coats moved among them, taking samples and making notes. They're experimenting on them, Ethan realized with horror. He crept closer, straining to hear the conversations of the researchers. 2 scientists stood near the edge of the compound, consulting a datapad. The bacterial agent is developing exactly as predicted, said one, a tall woman with short gray hair. Subject 3 is showing all the neurological symptoms we anticipated. The Tracery won't be able to establish telepathic connections with infected dragons, replied her colleague, a younger man with dark skin. They'll have no choice but to continue the sacrificial rituals, keeping their population in check. And we'll have exclusive access to study the uninfected specimens, the woman added with satisfaction. The company will be pleased. Ethan's blood ran cold as the truth dawned on him. The corruptions weren't natural. They were being deliberately caused by these human researchers. And Morvith hadn't been infected by a random meteor. She had been intentionally targeted. He backed away slowly, his mind racing. He needed to warn the Tracery, to tell them what the humans were doing. But as he turned to retreat, his foot snapped a twig. The sound was small, but in the quiet forest, it carried. The 2 researchers looked up sharply. Security scan, Sector 7. The woman barked into her communicator. Ethan ran, abandoning stealth for speed. Behind him, alarms began to blare from the compound. He sprinted through the forest, branches whipping at his face as he made for the spot where Morvith waited. We have to go, he shouted as he burst into the clearing. Now, he barely had time to scramble onto her back before she launched into the air, powerful wings carrying them skyward. Below, human security forces emerged from the compound, weapons raised. Energy bolts sizzled through the air around them as Morvith climbed higher. Head for the temple, Ethan urged, clinging to the saddle as she banked sharply to avoid another volley of energy blasts. We have to warn them. One shot grazed Morvith's wing, and Ethan felt her pain flash through their bond. She roared in anger but maintained her course, speeding toward the mountains with determined power. By the time they reached the temple, night had fallen. High Priest Valen was in the middle of an evening ritual when Ethan and Morvith landed on the central platform, both breathing hard from their frantic flight. Ethan Cole, Valen greeted him, concern evident in his elongated features. What has happened? We sensed your distress through Morvith. Humans, Ethan gasped, sliding from the dragon's back. There are humans beyond the mountains. They're the ones causing the dragon corruptions. They're doing it on purpose. A murmur of shock ran through the assembled Tracery. Valen raised his hands for silence, his expression grave. Explain, he commanded. Ethan described everything he had seen and heard. The facility, the captive dragons, the researchers' conversation. As he spoke, he saw disbelief turn to horror on the faces of the Tracery. These humans deliberately infect our sacred dragons to maintain our ritual sacrifices. Elder Samantha Wells asked, her voice shaking with outrage. Why would they do such a thing? For research, Ethan said bitterly. They want to study dragons without tracery interference. The sacrifices keep your numbers down while giving them access to the healthy dragons. And you are certain of this? Valen asked, his eyes piercing. Ethan met his gaze steadily. I heard it with my own ears. I saw the infected dragons. I saw what they're doing. Valen turned to the Council of Elders. We must verify this claim and, if true, take action to protect our dragons. I can show you, Ethan offered. Morveth and I can lead you there. The High Priest shook his head. Too dangerous. If these humans have weapons that can harm dragons from a distance, we cannot risk a direct confrontation. We need more information first. Send scouts, suggested Nora Briggs. Our best rangers can approach undetected and confirm the human child story. I'm not lying, Ethan protested. Valen placed a six-fingered hand on his shoulder. No one suggests that you are, Ethan Cole. But caution is warranted when facing an unknown threat. The scouts will depart at dawn. Ethan spent a restless night in his quarters, Morveth equally agitated beside him. Through their bond, he could sense her anger at the humans who had caused her suffering and now threatened her kind. We'll stop them, he promised, stroking her scales. Somehow, the scouts returned the following evening, their faces grim as they reported to the council. Everything was exactly as Ethan had described, a human research facility, captive dragons, and clear evidence of deliberate infection. They have ships capable of space travel, reported the lead scout, and weapons beyond our technology. Their security is extensive. High Priest Valen turned to Ethan. You understand these humans better than we do. What do you suggest? Ethan swallowed hard, feeling the weight of every tracery gaze upon him. We need to shut down their operation completely. If we just free the dragons, they'll start over somewhere else. We need to destroy their research and make sure they can't continue. An attack? Elder Avery Pierce asked, her tone skeptical. Our weapons are no match for theirs. Not a direct attack, Ethan said, an idea forming. But dragons aren't their only blind spot. They don't understand tracery technology either, especially your crystal matrices. The tracery used living crystal formations to store energy and information, a technology completely different from human electronic systems. The crystals operated on principles of resonance rather than electricity. What are you proposing? Valen asked. Ethan leaned forward eagerly. We create a disruption crystal tuned to interfere with their electronic systems. If we can get it close enough to their facility, it could shut down everything. Their barriers, weapons, communications, everything. And how do we deliver this crystal to their facility? Elder Wells asked. I'll do it, Ethan said firmly. They're looking for tracery, not a human child. I can approach without raising suspicion. Absolutely not, Valen declared. The risk is too great. It's our best chance, Ethan insisted. I know how humans think, how they operate. I can blend in long enough to plant the crystal. A heated debate erupted among the council members. Some supported Ethan's plan as their only viable option. Others considered it too dangerous to send a child, even a human one, into such peril. Finally, Nora Briggs spoke, her calm voice cutting through the arguments. The boy has already proven his courage and wisdom beyond his years. If he believes he can do this, we should trust him, but not send him alone. All eyes turned to her as she continued. The dragons themselves should be our allies in this. Not just Morveth, but all who are willing to fight for their kind. A coordinated effort, Valen nodded slowly. The disruption crystal to disable their technology, followed by dragon fire, Ethan finished. Once their barriers are down, the dragons can destroy the facility and free the captives. The plan took shape over the next 2 days. The temple's crystal shapers created a powerful disruption matrix, a beautiful but deadly formation of living crystal that would emit a pulse capable of overloading any electronic system within half a kilometer. Ethan memorized the layout of the facility from the scouts' detailed observations and planned his approach carefully. On the morning of the third day, Ethan stood on the temple platform, the disruption crystal safely packed in a satchel at his side. Around him, 20 of the temple's strongest dragons and their riders prepared for battle, their normally peaceful expressions replaced by grim determination. High Priest Valen approached, holding a small vial of luminescent blue liquid. "This is the essence of bonding," he explained. "Traditionally given only to Traesari who have completed the full 12 years of Dragon Rider training. But the Council has agreed. You have earned this honor." Ethan accepted the vial with trembling hands. "What does it do?" "It will deepen your bond with Morvith beyond what even most Traesari achieve with their dragons," Valen explained. "Your minds will be as one during the battle, allowing perfect coordination. Your human telepathic limitations will be temporarily lifted." Ethan uncorked the vial and drank the glowing liquid in one swallow. It tasted like starlight and mountain springs, if such things had flavors. For a moment, nothing happened. Then Morvith's consciousness flooded into his mind with crystal clarity. He gasped, overwhelmed by the dragon's thoughts and memories, stretching back centuries before his birth. Her perception of the world, rich with sense and magnetic fields invisible to human senses, layered over his own vision like a beautiful, complex tapestry. "Whoa," he whispered, steadying himself against her flank. "The effect will last approximately 6 hours, Valen told him. "Use it wisely." Ethan nodded, climbing onto Morvith's back with practiced ease. Through their enhanced bond, no words were needed. She understood the plan completely, sharing his determination to stop the humans who had caused so much suffering. "May the Ancient Ones watch over you all," Valen intoned formally, stepping back as the dragons prepared for takeoff. Morvith launched into the air, leading the formation. The journey to the Forbidden Reach would take less than an hour at top speed. The plan was simple but dangerous. Ethan would approach the facility on foot, posing as a lost child if challenged. Once inside the perimeter, he would activate the disruption crystal, disabling their systems. The moment the energy barriers around the captive dragons failed, the Traesari dragon riders would attack from above, destroying the facility and rescuing the prisoners. As they approached the mountains, Ethan directed Morvith to land in a clearing several kilometers from the human compound. The other dragons circled high above, hidden among the clouds, waiting for their signal. "Stay connected to me," Ethan told Morvith, sliding from her back. Through their enhanced bond, he felt her reluctance to let him go alone, her protective instinct flaring. "I'll be okay. Be ready when I call." The trek through the forest gave Ethan time to rehearse his story and calm his nerves. He was just a lost kid, separated from his parents during a scientific expedition. Simple, believable, and technically not even a lie, just misplaced in time. As he approached the edge of the clearing where the facility stood, he deliberately made noise, stumbling out of the underbrush with a practiced look of relief on his face. "Hello," he called out, waving his arms. "Is someone there? I need help." The reaction was immediate. Security personnel emerged from the nearest building, weapons raised but not fired when they saw it was just a child. "Where did you come from, kid?" demanded a burly guard, approaching cautiously. Ethan put on his best scared but relieved expression. "Oh, thank goodness. I got separated from my parents' research team 3 days ago. I've been lost in the woods forever." The guard lowered his weapon slightly, but maintained a suspicious stance. "There aren't any other research teams authorized in this sector. We were studying native flora near the river delta." Ethan improvised, remembering his parents' actual research. "Xenobotanical survey for possible pharmaceutical applications. My mom's the lead botanist." The technical terminology seemed to convince the guard that Ethan was indeed from a scientific family. He sighed and gestured toward the main building. "Come on, then. We'll contact headquarters and see if there's any record of your team." Ethan allowed himself to be led toward the facility, Morvith's consciousness a constant, reassuring presence in the back of his mind. Through her eyes, he could see the other dragons circling patiently, hidden among the clouds. Inside the facility, Ethan was brought to a small office where a woman in a lab coat was summoned to deal with him. He recognized her immediately as one of the scientists he had overheard discussing the dragon infections. "Well, what have we here?" she asked, her tone not unkind but clinical, as though Ethan were an unexpected specimen to be catalogued. "Dr. Emma Fox," she introduced herself, offering no handshake. "And you are?" "Ethan," he replied, deliberately leaving off his surname. "Ethan Cole. I got separated from my parents' research team." "Interesting," Dr. Fox said, tapping at a console. "There's no authorized xenobotanical survey in this sector. In fact, there are no authorized human operations on this continent besides our own." Ethan's heart raced, but he maintained his innocent expression. "Maybe they didn't file the right permits? My parents are kind of absent-minded about paperwork. They're scientists, you know." Dr. Fox's eyes narrowed slightly. "Indeed. Well, Ethan, why don't you wait here while I make some inquiries? Would you like something to drink?" "Water would be great," he said, trying to look relieved rather than anxious. As soon as she left the room, Ethan pulled the disruption crystal from his satchel. It was beautiful, a complex lattice of translucent crystal that pulsed with inner light. The Tracery crystal shapers had designed it to activate on impact, shattering into 1,000,000 resonating fragments that would blanket the area with disruptive energy. Through his bond with Morvith, he sent a mental image. Ready. He felt her acknowledgement and the shifting positions of the dragon force above. They were moving into attack formation, awaiting his signal. Dr. Fox returned with a glass of water and a security guard. "Ethan, I'm afraid there's no record of any research team in this area. Can you tell me how you really came to be here?" Ethan took the water with a shaking hand, not entirely an act. "I told you I got lost. My parents are probably looking for me right now." "I see," she said, her tone hardening. "And would your parents happen to be Tracery sympathizers? Perhaps they've been living among the natives, learning their ways?" Ethan's surprise was genuine. "You know about the Tracery?" Dr. Fox smiled coldly. "Of course we do. We've been observing them for years. Primitive in technology, but fascinating in their telepathic abilities, especially their bond with the dragons. A bond that makes the dragons essentially useless for proper scientific study." She leaned forward. "Unless, of course, one could disrupt that bond. Make the dragons untamable. That's what you're doing," Ethan said, abandoning his pretense. "You're infecting the dragons on purpose." "Infecting is such a negative term," Dr. Fox replied smoothly. "We prefer to think of it as liberation, freeing these magnificent creatures from telepathic control so they can be studied objectively." "You're making them suffer," Ethan countered, anger rising in his voice. "I've seen what your liberation does to them. It causes pain, confusion, rage." Dr. Fox's eyebrows rose. "You've seen? Then you're not just a lost child, are you? You've been with the Tracery." Her eyes widened with sudden realization. "Wait, Ethan Cole. The crash survivors from 4 years ago. We thought you died with your parents." Ethan stood, the disruption crystal clutched tightly in his hand. "My parents would be ashamed of what you're doing here. They studied alien life to understand and protect it, not to torture it. Your parents were idealists with limited vision," Dr. Fox said dismissively. "The company has broader interests." "What company?" Ethan demanded. "Galaxy Corp Xenobiology Division," she replied. "The premier research organization for extraterrestrial life forms in the settled systems. Dragons like these could revolutionize multiple industries if we can understand them properly without Tracery interference." Ethan's gaze hardened. "You won't get the chance." With all his strength, he hurled the disruption crystal at the floor between them. It shattered on impact, releasing a blinding flash of energy that pulsed outward in concentric rings. The effect was immediate and dramatic. Every electronic device in the room went dead. The lights flickered and died. From outside came shouts of alarm as systems throughout the facility failed simultaneously. Through his bond with Morvith, Ethan sent the signal. "Now?" The security guard lunged for him, but Ethan was already moving, ducking under his grasp and sprinting for the door. Behind him, Dr. Fox shouted for backup, but her communicator was useless. Ethan ran through darkened corridors, guided by Morvith's aerial view of the facility. He could see through her eyes that the energy barriers around the captive dragons had collapsed, the creatures within stirring with new awareness. Above, the Traceari dragon force descended from the clouds, 20 magnificent beasts diving toward the compound with riders guiding their attack. The first wave released concentrated blasts of dragon fire at the weapons emplacements, destroying them before the humans could mount a defense. Ethan burst out of the main building into chaos. Researchers and security personnel ran in all directions, their carefully controlled operation collapsing around them. Without their technology, they were vulnerable and disorganized. A deafening roar announced Morvith's arrival. She landed in the center of the compound, her massive wings creating a windstorm that knocked several fleeing humans off their feet. Through their bond, Ethan felt her fierce joy at this moment of retribution. He ran to her, scrambling onto her back with practiced ease. "The captive dragons," he shouted, though the words were unnecessary with their enhanced bond. She already knew his intention. They launched into the air and swooped toward the holding pens. The 5 captive dragons were awakening from their sickness-induced lethargy, the disruption crystal having broken the electronic systems that delivered the bacterial agent to their bodies. Ethan and Morvith landed beside the largest pen. The dragon within, a magnificent silver-scaled female, regarded them warily, still weak from her ordeal. "We're here to help," Ethan called out, sending waves of reassurance through his bond with Morvith, hoping the captive dragon would sense his intentions. He dismounted and approached the gate, now unlocked without power. The silver dragon watched him intently as he swung the gate open, offering her freedom. For a tense moment, she didn't move. Then, slowly, she rose to her feet and stepped forward, unfurling wings that had been confined too long. She looked directly at Ethan, and he felt a brush of gratitude against his mind. Not a full telepathic connection, but an acknowledgement. One by one, they freed the remaining dragons. Some could fly immediately. Others, more weakened by their captivity, needed assistance. The Traceari riders landed to help, using their healing skills to stabilize the most affected. Meanwhile, the attack continued. Dragon fire rained down on the facility, destroying laboratories, ships, and equipment. The humans, their technological advantages neutralized, could only flee into the surrounding forest. Dr. Fox emerged from the main building, just as Ethan and Morvith were preparing to join the final assault. She looked around at the destruction in disbelief. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" she shouted at Ethan. "Years of research, billions in investment, all lost because of a child's misplaced sentimentality." Ethan regarded her calmly from Morvith's back. "It wasn't misplaced. These dragons are sentient beings with their own rights and dignity. What you were doing was wrong. You can't stop progress," she spat. "Galaxy Corp will send more ships, more researchers. We'll start again elsewhere." "No," Ethan said firmly. "You won't. Because we're not just destroying your facility. We're taking your ships too." As if on cue, several Traceari riders landed beside the remaining spacecraft, their dragons using precise bursts of flame to disable the engines without destroying the vessels completely. "The Traceari will use your ships to contact the Galactic Council," Ethan explained. "They'll report what Galaxy Corp has been doing here, violating the rights of sentient species, disrupting the ecosystem of a protected planet. How do you think that will go for your company?" Dr. Fox's face paled. The Galactic Council took xenobiological ethics violations extremely seriously. Companies found guilty faced not just fines, but complete dissolution. "You're bluffing," she said, but her voice lacked conviction. "The Traceari don't even understand our technology." "They understand enough," Ethan replied, "and they have me to help with the rest." High Priest Valen landed nearby, his dragon a magnificent blue that matched the color of his skin. He approached with dignified steps, regarding Dr. Fox with calm intensity. "Your people will not be harmed," he told her formally. "That is not our way. But you will leave this world and never return." The dragons of Celerin are under our protection, and now, under the protection of the Galactic Council as well. Within hours, the human facility was completely destroyed, the captive dragons freed and receiving treatment. The Traceari had suffered no casualties, though several dragons bore minor injuries from the battle. The human researchers and security personnel were being gathered into groups to be transported to the nearest spaceport and off-planet once arrangements could be made. Ethan sat on a ridge overlooking the valley, Morvith curled protectively around him. The enhanced bond from the essence of bonding was beginning to fade, but a new depth of connection remained, a permanent change in their relationship. "We did it," he whispered, stroking her scales. Through their bond, he felt her satisfaction, her pride in what they had accomplished together. High Priest Valen approached, seating himself beside Ethan with uncharacteristic informality. "You have done a great service to Celerin today, Ethan Cole. The Council is unanimous in its gratitude." "I just did what was right," Ethan said, embarrassed by the praise. "Sometimes, doing what is right requires the greatest courage," Valen replied. "You faced your own kind to protect ours. Such actions define true character." Ethan looked out over the valley, where Traceari healers worked with the rescued dragons. "What happens now? Will the Galactic Council really help protect the dragons?" "I believe they will," Valen said. "Thanks to the evidence we have gathered from the human facility, and with your testimony, we have a compelling case. But more importantly, we now understand the true nature of the corruption that has plagued our dragons for generations. No more will we sacrifice the innocent to a false belief." He placed a six-fingered hand on Ethan's shoulder. "Which brings me to a question. What do you wish for your future, Ethan Cole? With the human presence revealed, you have choices you did not have before. The Council would sponsor your education on any world you might choose, if you wish to return to human society." Ethan looked at Morvith, feeling the strength of their bond. The thought of leaving her, of leaving Celerin, was painful to contemplate. "This is my home now," he said firmly. "The Traceari are my people. Morvith is my family. I want to stay and continue learning to be a dragon healer." Valen smiled, a rare expression on his usually solemn face. "I had hoped you would say that. The dragons of Celerin need you, Ethan Cole. Perhaps you were always meant to be here, the bridge between our worlds." 1 year later, Ethan stood on the temple platform in formal Traceari robes, his heart racing with excitement. Today marked his official induction as a junior dragon healer, the youngest in Celerin's history to achieve this honor. The great temple was filled with Traceari citizens and dragon riders. In the years since the battle at the human facility, much had changed. The Galactic Council had indeed intervened, placing Celerin under protected status and levying severe sanctions against GalaxiCorp for their ethical violations. The company had been forced to pay reparations to the Traceari people and fund a permanent monitoring station to prevent similar incursions in the future. More importantly, with the source of the corruption identified and eliminated, no more dragons had fallen ill. The ancient practice of sacrifice had been permanently abandoned, replaced by a new tradition of healing and celebration. High Priest Valen approached, carrying the ceremonial healer's pendant, a crystal similar to the disruption matrix Ethan had used, but tuned for healing rather than destruction. "Ethan Cole," Valen intoned formally, "you came to us as a stranger, became our ally, and now stand as one of our most honored healers. Through your courage and compassion, you saved not just one dragon, but our entire way of life. The Council recognizes you as Ethan Cole, dragon friend and healer of Celerin." He placed the pendant around Ethan's neck. The crystal glowed warmly against his skin, resonating with the energy of the dragons gathered around the temple. "Thank you, High Priest," Ethan said, bowing deeply. "I promise to honor this responsibility and continue learning from both Traceari wisdom and human science." As the ceremony concluded, Ethan made his way to where Morvith waited at the edge of the platform. In the years since their battle, she had grown even more magnificent, her obsidian scales now accented with streaks of silver, a rare development that the elders said reflected the unique nature of her bond with a human. "Ready for our evening flight?" he asked, though the question was largely unnecessary with their bond. She already knew his thoughts, just as he sensed her eagerness to take to the skies. He climbed onto her back, the movement now as natural as breathing. They launched into the air, soaring high above the temple and the forests beyond. Below them, Celerin spread out in all its beauty, no longer divided by forbidden reaches or ancient taboos, but united under the protection of dragons and their riders. Through their bond, Ethan shared with Morvith his perfect contentment. He had lost his parents and his world, only to find a new family and a new purpose. The orphan boy and the untamable dragon had saved each other, and in doing so, had changed the destiny of an entire planet. As they banked toward the setting sun, Ethan realized that his parents would have been proud. He was continuing their work of understanding and protecting alien life, just in a way they could never have imagined. And somewhere in the stars, he hoped they were watching as he and Morvith soared, two unlikely friends who had proven that the strongest bonds often form where least expected. And that was the end of the story. If you listened all the way to here, don't forget to leave feedback about what you thought of the story in the comments, whether positive or negative. Your feedback helps us improve. Also, leave your like and subscribe to the channel for more stories like this one. And I'll leave here on the screen another video that I'm sure you'll like. Big hug, and see you in the next story.